Coming up on LiveWire, we've got a great show for you today. You're going to meet Rabbi David Azen, who has a program called Messiah Begins With Me. And it's a play, a stand-up play. So sit down and we'll be right with you right after this. Rabbi David Azen, welcome.
Thank you, Ray. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's good I'm glad you're here. You got here from you just got off like the plane from Israel, right?
Oh, a couple of days ago, but I'm still not on this time zone at all. So
Yeah.
I'm running on
all
3
the
hours
rabbis
of sleep.
in the world, did they come to?
You know, as our pal Richard said, what do you call a group of rabbis? It's an argument of rabbis. I love that. But actually, we were pretty much of one accord. We're all the progressive rabbis from North America who met over there.
Wow.
But that's a whole other conversation.
It is, yeah. You come on another time. We'll talk about
Sure.
that. But I'm really interested in this program that you're doing in a theater
Yes.
In Midtown Sacramento for a whole week.
Yes.
It's great. So you're going to play Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday at 8.
At 7.
Oh, at 7
p.m.
7 p.m. And then Sunday at 2.
At 2.
Wow.
That's right.
And the thing is called Messiah Begins With Me, which is interesting because, you know, the first 2 letters are M-E and M. I get that.
It's a literally stupid title.
Oh, I say, okay.
In that sense.
Okay. I
Yeah.
thought it was more of an admonition for...
Oh, well, you know, it's completely egotistical as well, right?
I see, sure.
But, you know, as a friend of mine pointed out, that Messiah also begins with mess. And,
That's right.
you know,
Very
you really
good.
do need a
Mess.
mess in order to require a Messiah. So it's one of those words that...
That you can really do in or out.
Exactly.
That's fascinating,
Exactly.
fascinating. So you were walking down the street one day and you
Yes.
thought, I think I'm going to do a stand-up routine called Messiah is Me. Well, not the Messiah. Messiah is Me.
So this is... I've been a rabbi for almost 40 years, believe it or not.
Wow.
37 years exactly. And my first position was in a really huge congregation. And I had 10 funerals in a week. And I came away from that needing a way to process that you can't do as a rabbi. You've got to do it in theater. That's what theater's for.
see.
In fact, actually, this was Steve Martin's idea.
Really?
That I recreate the evening where I showed up late for the holiest night of the year because of the sequence of events that I recount in the show, and that I work out the trauma through theater. So Steve suggested that I get an audience together, pretend that they were the congregation that night when
Brilliant.
I absolutely lost my lid. Now, it's not that Steve Martin, it was my therapist, Steve Martin.
Oh, another Steve Martin. Okay.
A different Steve Martin.
Well, I knew the
but-
other Steve Martin.
Did you?
Oh, yeah, I worked with him once.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
Oh, I'd love to meet him. But
Funny,
at any
funny
rate, Steve suggested that. And at this point, I've now done the show a number of times, so I no longer need to run in and trip and fall with golf clubs like I used to do. I can just do it as a recounting of it because I've kind of gotten through the trauma. Just like once I realized that my junior high foibles in dating were great stand-up material with the youth group.
Yeah.
Right? Tragedy plus time equals comedy.
Yes,
Right.
absolutely.
So at this point, it's mostly comedy.
Mostly comedy. I think it's fascinating. And, you know, I have to say right away, because I want to talk a little bit about it, because you're doing it as a fundraiser
Yes.
for a nonprofit called Food Secure.
Fresher Futures is the name of the
sorry,
nonprofit,
I see.
and it's something that I started actually 17 years ago here in Sacramento. And just really briefly, restored a kitchen in deep South Sacramento, did 600,000 meals during the pandemic for the unhoused. We were doing the Project Room Key motels, but also it was a kitchen that was being run by youth that we had trained.
I see.
So it was fantastic. You had sheriffs coming in to volunteer and these 18 and 19-year-olds saying, okay, go do this, go do that.
I love it.
Yeah, but we're working on a new model called community meal plans
I see.
at housing complexes and with youth organizations. So we can talk a lot more about that. But it is a benefit for that.
Yeah. When you get it started, I got online and I thought, what's this? And it says that in this county, 280,500 people
Yes.
Suffer from food insecurity. What does that mean?
So food insecurity replaced hunger because it meant that people didn't always know where their food came from, where their next meal was coming from. The better term these days is actually nutrition insecurity, because people can get calories. They can go to a lot of different places and they can fill up on a lot of carbs, but then they're nutritionally insecure. So getting better food, fresher food, is really the issue, which is why it's called Fresher Futures.
So that's the key for the fundraiser.
That's the key for the fundraiser.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So, and the Messiah begins with me is interesting. Is it about the Bible?
It is. It is. So, I start from really how do we deal with death, right? So those 10 funerals left me just empty, right?
Yes.
I actually tell a story in the show where I went into the supermarket. I had 2 funerals and then a visit with a family for a funeral the next day, right? So 3 encounters with death in one day. I went to the supermarket. I ended up getting in line, reading People magazine, making sure nobody got in front of me. And by the time I reached the front, I reached down and I was attached to a completely empty cart. I was that far gone that I was absolutely committed to a completely empty cart. I had lost my mind.
Wow.
So, but people, and frankly, I've lost my eldest to cancer 8 years ago. So the good news about that was that I had already worked through a lot of that. But finding a God you can talk to in those moments, when you don't believe that there's a plan for such things, when you don't believe that they're in a better place, or that doesn't find comfort. There's a whole list of things that people say to try to be comforting that turn out to really not be the most helpful things that you can say. So I'm dealing with that in the first part of the show. But then the Bible starts with the story of the Garden of Eden and blaming the introduction of death on Eve. And I've been the only man of the cloth, as far as I know, to play Adam and tour in a show about the Garden of Eden that tells a different story, a story of what might have happened to lead to the story being told the way it is, as opposed to taking the story literally. Wow. And in the course of unpacking that, we get at a lot of important issues today. So, for example, people remember that Eve was punished by pain in childbirth. But the next line is, your urge will be for your husband, and he will rule over you. So all of these women who have been convinced that men should be in charge, right? And all of the forces trying to find balance between men and women in society today go back at least 3,000 to 4,000 years to this story being told and adopted as the literal Word of God. So I'm a progressive rabbi. I think that the Bible was a creation of human beings searching for spirituality. It's a record of our sort of evolution spiritually.
Evolution.
And we have to unpack it in a different way in order to get to a different view of God.
Wow. You brought some pictures. Can we look at them?
Sure,
Maybe
absolutely.
you be the narrator.
Oh, okay.
Okay, here we go.
I think we've got the flyer from the show.
Okay.
And there's me 30 years ago in my last performance. And you see 2 women, because I mentioned Eve. We'll get to, so Messiah Begins With Me. It's next week, next Tuesday to Sunday. And if you go to the next slide, that would be me, one incarnation. Adam creates the fork, and right, and he starts to mess around with the garden. And if we go to the next slide, we'll see that according to a legend over 2,000 years ago, the serpent was female. and her name was Lilith. And a lot of people don't know that Lilith, but in the first chapter of Genesis, there was male and female created together at the same time. And so they said, what happened to that female? And so according to some legends, Adam had a first wife, and things didn't go so well.
Well, I guess not.
And they got into a fight over whether the voice comes from the sky or from nature and the ground. And Adam invents the fork and starts to dig things up, and Lilith goes nuts, and he drives her out of the garden. And it's at that point that Eve then comes along. So
that's a wonderful story. I like it even better.
What's
this
very
picture?
better. And this
There it
picture is from Lilith magazine. So in 1969, a woman named Lilith Rivlin, rediscovered Lilith and said, hold on, she's a feminine heroine. She was the one who literally said to Adam, we're made from the same stuff at the same time. You have no right to rule over me. And so when I produced the show, Guarding the Garden, they published excerpts from it in Lilith magazine. And it says, long ago in Eden, the snake talks turkey to Eve. Look, you stay here and you'll be a second-class citizen forever. You leave Eden and you have to wait maybe 2,000-3,000 years at the most for a square deal. And she's like, that's tempting. And Adam's like, I'm staying here, right?
Yeah.
So, and then you got the poster from the original show that we did. We toured from 1991 to 1995, played Dartmouth, Smith College, played New York, Miami, Chicago, Toronto. Probably 10 to 15,000 people saw the show back then. It was a musical, and my first wife played Eve and did the music and the lyrics.
Which one?
Don't ever do biblical drama with your spouse without a really good therapist. And I didn't have Steve Martin at that point.
I see. Okay, it's a therapist.
Yeah, exactly.
I like it. Okay, who are these people?
And that's the crew that we trained and ran that kitchen.
That was really amazing. So,
Yeah.
and the new kitchen, the new food.
So we,
How did that
right
work?
now we are working with the Housing and Real SHRA at a housing complex, and they're actually building a kitchen there, and we'll be training residents to actually use the kitchen to feed themselves, their families, and their neighbors.
Is this a new kind of?
It's a new model.
New model that
yeah, I've talked to the head of California Food and Ag, and there's no way right now for people to bundle their resources, right? To if they're on food assistance, everybody goes to the store and catch as catch can. There's no cooperative way for people to pool their money and get better food. So that's the nut I'm trying to crack.
That's a good one. That's a good
Thank
one.
you.
Originally the co-op was founded by people who did that.
Yes.
The Sacramento Co-op.
Yes.
They did that because my wife's family did that. And
They helped start it.
They helped start it by doing that. They
Bravo.
would buy, a chunk of cheese, 30 pounds of cheese, and people had put their money in for it. They get whatever it is.
Exactly. So why shouldn't a housing complex function like a cooperative? But there you go.
Fantastic. So it's an interesting thing now. You come from a family that is like social.
Not particularly.
I see. What happened to you?
I grew up on the golf course, actually.
Oh, I see. What?
Yeah, I was a champion junior golfer, actually.
Whoa.
When I was 15, I won the New York, New Jersey, Connecticut 15 and under golf tournament for the Metropolitan Golf Association at Scarsdale Country Club in the New York area. And I beat both sons of the pro at Winged Foot Country Club, which at the time would not have allowed my family to be members. So it was my experience of otherness in this country, right? Because Jews weren't allowed into certain country clubs, and there had been quotas on Jews and colleges and all sorts of things like that. So I have that. My grandmother actually remembered the Cossacks surrounding her house in Belarus. So I'm that far away from that kind of stuff.
Sure.
And that, along with my rabbi being involved in homeless issues and things like that, really sparked my call to social justice. And so I went to the only school whose golf coach did not call me.
I see.
Because I didn't think I was quite good enough to be pro, and I caddied for Tom Watson for 2 days, and I knew that I would have to spend every waking minute playing golf, and that was not going to be of use to
put
anybody
your club
else.
Down and
so I started reading Soviet history.
Soviet history,
12
the good
hours
book.
a day, and trying to figure out how to, have how to make life more equitable for folks who don't have anything without breaking the furniture, if you know what I mean.
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
So we have to take a pause right now for
Sure.
the cause,
Okay.
and we will be back in a few minutes with you.
All right.
Okay, here we go. Take a pause.
I don't remember how it started.
Go to that.
Our back and forth. It always came back.
Dad!
You probably don't remember what you told me,
That was perfect.
but I heard every word.
Okay, Dad. 1, 2, 3. You saved me. Dad?
Are you okay?
I'm fine, dear.
Your hero needs you now, and AARP is here to help. Find the care guides you need at aarp.org/caregiving.
Do you want to meet a family with a transgender kid? Here we are. Max loves to do backflips. Max loves to play his ukulele. Max loves to just be a kid and just be himself. When I found out I was pregnant, all I really wanted was a happy, healthy, whole child. And that's what I got. I think it's really important for people to know that trans kids don't have a political agenda. They are just kids. Like any parent, we love our kids unconditionally, and we will never stop fighting for them. Stand with us. Protect our families.
For those dealing with the daily struggles of caring for a loved one, we hear you. That's why AARP created a community with experts and other caregivers to help us better care for ourselves and the ones we love.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, Rabbi David Azen doing a snippet from his upcoming production at the theater called the Three Penny in Midtown. It's called, what's it called? Messiah Begins with Me.
You may have heard the story about the rabbi who goes golfing on the holiest day of the year, Yom Kippur, and he gets out before anybody else is out there, tees off on the 500-yard par 5 first hole, and miraculously gets a hole-in-one. And all the angels are geschrying and saying, God, how could you let this guy on the holiest day of the year get out there and get a hole-in-one? And God says, who can he tell? Well, I only wish that was why I was late for the holiest night of the year. I showed up an hour late at the end of my first and last week in my first congregation due to 10 funerals, and the last one just, well, you'll have to come and see the show to hear the rest of that story. But I want to tell you about one of those funerals, Irving. Irving was a great guy, and in the middle of this horrific week, I am there. It's a beautiful fall day, and the leaves are blowing in and down and out and through the grave, and it's my third funeral of the day, and I'm just thinking, there's nothing like a good funeral. There's nothing like a good funeral. There's nothing like a good funeral. And as the casket is going down, I suddenly hear his grandson say, damn, I forgot the cigar. I look over. I wanted to bury him with one of his favorite stogies. I look over at the funeral director. I say, can we do that, Greg? And he says, knowing which side the bread is buttered on and who's paying the bills. Whatever you say, Rabbi. Now, Jews don't bury their dead with anything because, contrary to our experience in Egypt, where live people were buried with the Pharaoh in a pyramid scheme that was just for the sake of one guy and one guy only at the top of the pyramid, we said no to that and actually didn't say much about life after death at that point. But I was new, I was raw, I was green, and I didn't know if I was going to get paid at the end of this week. And so I said, okay. And then they handed me the cigar. And I'm like, oh, I really didn't want to see Irving again. There you go, Irving. Rest in peace.
Wow. That's funny. Good story. It's a true story.
It's a true story.
Wow.
Half of what I say is true. I just won't tell you which half.
Okay. It's an amazing thing, and it's so important that this is a kind of a fundraiser, and it really raises money for food insecurity.
Yes. So as a rabbi, I'm really conscious of people on Sabbaths, right? The Friday, Saturday, and Sunday are our Sabbaths.
Yeah.
And it seems to me that in a country of faith like ours, it should be an abomination for people to go hungry, especially on the Sabbaths. And it also turns out that children who are not in school on the weekends, that's a particular pain point for them, right?
Yes.
Because they get school meals during the week. At least summertime, there's summer meal programs, but the weekends are a particularly difficult time. And so I'm also the chair of the FEMA Emergency Food and Shelter Board, actually, for the 6th county area. So we distribute to a number of different organizations. But I'm really hoping to start a movement toward, for $25, you can sponsor somebody, making sure that they have 2 to 3 really, dignified nutrition, right? And it would be a matching program, so it'll end up, it could be a buy one, get one kind of a thing. But it's a new concept, and I'm pushing it as hard as I can. And,
I think
so every ticket purchased will actually provide a free weekend for somebody to start to feel like they're getting dignity in their nutrition, and then hopefully we can take it from there.
So we now have to tell you how they can get there and what they're doing. So your presentation will starts on next Tuesday, coming up on the 7th, and it runs every night that week at 7 o'clock.
Yes.
Except for Sunday, which there's a 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
Correct.
And they can just get on and get their tickets right now. Well, yes, they could buy a ticket right now. www.calstage.org. And it's a benefit for food security through Fresher Futures.
Fresher Futures, that's right.
Fresher Futures.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So it's important, I think, that we have the development of programs like this. I drive down the street today in Sacramento, and I see people just sitting out there, and in their tents and
yeah. I think the question we should ask ourselves is, what would our society look like if everybody knew that they were going to eat all right today? Like, what would that do on its own, right? It's the foundation for everything. If you look at the Maslow's pyramid of needs, right? Food even before shelter. I mean, it's so essential. And I'll tell you actually, part of what this show is about is the theological journey that I took to arrive at the solutions that I've come to. And I think that the idea that God is perfect and knows what's going to happen, I mean, even though there's free will and you can't really square those, it's almost impossible. You have to do these mental gymnastics to imagine that God knows exactly what's going to happen and we still have free will. But we're an experiment. I mean, the first 11 chapters of Genesis, my teacher Cyrus Gordon at NYU said, a record of God's failures. It's an experiment that doesn't go well. God regrets creating us at the time of the flood. The Tower of Babel, it's like, beam me up, Scotty, get me off of this planet altogether. Yeah. So we're going to have folks who can't thrive on their own. It's part of the way society is. So what if we just assumed that not everybody's going to pull themselves up by their bootstraps, that life is really hard, and that some people are going to fall prey to things that aren't in their best interest. And that's what a society, a caring society, is for. You know, I remember when George Bush talked about compassionate conservatism.
Yes.
Where has that gone? Where nobody talks about that anymore. I'd like to see the compassionate conservatives get on board, and every church could be putting on, meals, and or having their congregants support food secure Sabbaths. And we could have a very, very different country in a very short time.
I'm very surprised that Sacramento County would have so many people, because I think it is graded as, one of the places where you can get food.
Alchemist is a great organization in town, Sam Greenlee and the Alchemist team, and they have actually a map of all the food resources now, alchemist.org. So there are more and more ways to get good food. And Blake at the food bank, they're purchasing massive quantities of produce, they're supporting local farmers, they're doing all the right things. And a lot of people don't have the time, skills, or resources to put that into really good food on the table. So we need prepared meals too.
Thank you, Rabbi David Azen. And also, we'll see you at the theater, I guess. And
yes.
That's starting on the 7th. That people need to just Google the words Cal Stage, and Cal Stage will come up, and they'll tell you how to get there.
And there's limited seating, so get your seats now.
There it is. And we've got a screen up right now, and we're going to say goodbye to everyone. Is that correct?
Boy,
yes?
That went fast.
That
Ray,
did.
you're great.
Zoom, zoom. All right. We'll see you next week on LiveWire.